All right, good evening and welcome. Thank you for coming out this evening for the Master Facility Plan presentation. My name is Andrew Jackson. I'm Superintendent, and I'm joined with Pauletta Crowley, Director of Student and Community Services. We have Todd Bowling, Director of Business Services, and we have Amy Wells, Treasurer, and we'll kind of go through this presentation. Tonight's presentation will talk about the assessment of the current facilities. We'll also explain the current Master Facility Plan, and then we'll discuss the financial impact, and then we'll open up the floor at the end for any questions that anyone may have. So at this point, I will turn it over to Pauletta Crowley.
Good evening. Well, we contracted with Roth Lesko, our architects, to look at our building facility at each of our individual buildings. And so we put a team together that consisted of community members, parents, building administrators, and central office administrators. And when that team met, we kind of broke into two sections. One group looked at the financial aspect of the district, looking at our current financial picture, our 5-year forecast, and then with the help of Roth Lesko, a team went into each building to look at the needs of the building, facility itself, what renovations could be taken care of, and whether or not the renovations would be adequate, or if the cost of the renovations would be such that it might be better to replace the buildings. So we had one team looking at that aspect, the other team was the financial aspect, and then the other team, again working with the architects, going into the building, looking at our current facility plan, our enrollment projections, to see if our buildings were adequate for the number of students that we would have over the next few years. I think I messed that up slightly, but we'll go through it. We wanted to determine the cost of the necessary renovations and the cost for replacement of our school buildings. And those costs were compared to determine a ratio of how much it would cost to renovate a building versus how much it would be to replace the building. So again, with the help of the architects, they went in, looked at what would it cost to renovate, and then we looked at what it would cost to bring a building up to today's standards as a new building. As you can see by this chart, we went through each building and what it would cost to replace the building versus what the renovation cost would be. And as the two teams came together and looked at the financial data and the facilities data, we kind of settled on a 70%. And 4 of the 5 elementary buildings that we're looking at replacing and building new were over 70% ratio as far as replacement versus renovating. And so those were the buildings we concentrated on. All of the team members unanimously agreed that elementary schools would be the best place for us to start. And so that's what we did.
And Mr. Todd Bowling is going to come up and kind of go through a list of the various actually a list of the current facilities and the types of issues that were brought out as a result of the assessment.
All right, so what we've got together for you is some pictures of buildings that need renovated and then those that need replaced. We have a lot of roofing issues that are coming to light, so it gets down to how much do you want to pay for roofing on buildings that need to be replaced. And if you looked at her chart that she put up there, it showed that Struble, Pleasant Run Elementary, Montford Heights next door, Weigel were the ones that were pretty much the ones that needed to be replaced because of their percentage value. So some of the issues we saw, as you can see, water on the roof here at Pleasant Run Middle School, and these roofs have gotten to the age where the drains, where they used to be tilted toward them, so the drains that work efficiently are no longer working. If you look in some of our boiler rooms and some of our heating units that are in some of the entryways to some of the buildings, they're old, they're not energy efficient, they're to the point where they need to be replaced. Or we just keep putting Band-Aids on it, which costs us more money. You can see some of the cracks in some of the floors, some of our kitchens, Taylor and Pleasant Run Elementary School, some of the deterioration just from the years. You can see some ceilings in some rooms we don't even let our kids use that are in the buildings. We have some facades of the buildings that can be replaced, and through renovations, the face of this building can be fixed and put into a standard where it meets what a new building would look like. So renovations can eventually take care of these places. We've got stepways that are coming into the building that are cracking. just cracks in the wall. Doesn't mean the foundation shifting or anything else. It's just cracks that can be replaced and fully taken care of. So these are some of the areas of the building envelope that are seeing issues. And now, Dr. Jet, or is it Pauletta?
Took my notes. This next slide shows what the master facility plan is. The committee came up with 3 different options and brought them to the board. The 2 of the options was a 1 high school plan where the 2 high schools would be combined into 1 high school. Ultimately, the board chose to keep 2 high schools. So what you see here is the 2 high school plan. And you can see at the very top, both high schools get renovated. All 3 middle schools get renovated as well. And then at the bottom, you can see our elementary schools. So you can see that Welch and PRE get combined into 1 building. And it's a new building, about 900 students on the PRE campus. And then some of PRE and Taylor get combined into a new building, about 900 students on the Taylor campus. Colerain gets renovated. Struble and Weigel get combined into a new building on the Struble campus of approximately 900 students. And Montford Heights gets renovated. To kind of explain what you see here with PRE actually in 2 different buildings, the current setup with our elementaries is Welch is a K-3 building and Taylor is a K-3 building. Both those buildings feed into Pleasant Run Middle or Pleasant Run Elementary, which is a 4-5 building. So what will happen is all the students that live in the Welch attendance area, that'll be a K-5 school, and they will stay there through 5th grade in a new building. And then Taylor will also be a K-5 building, and they'll stay there through the 5th grade. And then same thing with Struble and Weigel. So what ultimately will happen is we'll have 5 elementaries, and they'll all be the same grade configuration of K through 5. By doing that and combining buildings, we eliminate ongoing costs. So we basically take 2 buildings offline. We take 5 buildings and replace them with 3. And as a result, you can see the top 3 buildings here are the most expensive ones. They're all right around $21 million a piece, and those are the 3 new buildings. And then every one thing below that are the renovation that we're going to do with this first phase. When the architects listed the various renovations, they gave us items for each building that need to be taken care of in the first 5 years, and then the most urgent needs, and then everything else can be taken care of later. So this building plan takes care of anything that needed to be done in the first 5 years, according to the architects. And by combining 5 elementaries into 3, it even shows a greater ratio as a result of that. So you have here the renovation costs of the 5 elementary schools we are replacing, which is over $55 million. The 3 that we're replacing with 3 of just under $64 million. So by doing that, the ratio jumps up to 86%. So it's 86% of the cost to replace it would have cost to renovate those 5 buildings, and that was another reason why the committee decided to combine buildings and make them larger. Ultimately, it's cheaper to build 1 900-student building than 2 450-student buildings, and you can see those costs get realized in that graph. Here's a list of the renovations, and Mr. Bowling again is going to kind of go through those different items.
So the renovations came in 2 parts. Now that we determined which buildings needed to be renovated, we looked at renovations that could be done in the first 5 years and other items that needed to be addressed in the next 5 to 10 after that. All renovations basically that we will cover tonight is what will happen in the first 5 years if the levy passes. So what would we need to do, and what does it include for Colerain L, Northwest High School, Colerain High School, the 3 middle schools? What renovations are there? Well, it's roofing. Like I said, we have a lot of issues with roofing, a lot of repairs and replacements of roof that we've just neglected because we haven't had the money to do them all as needed. Windows, we want warm, safe, and dry to be our theme here. So good roofs, good windows. Our building envelope, the brick pointing, the ceiling, the caulking. Exterior doors, hazardous materials, asbestos removal, life and safety, which includes fire alarms, sprinkler systems, and any type of safety features we would need to add, and technology. With all the online testing that is present now in our schools, our technology needs to be upgraded. We've done a great job of upgrading our 2 high schools the past couple years. We did all 3 middle schools this past summer, and now we're moving into our elementaries. The other thing that's not up here for all of this to go basically with your technology and your life safety is we need a better electrical systems in these schools, so that it will be part of it also.
I'm going to click through these for me and I'll talk. Thank you. Now we have a list of photographs of what our buildings could look like. So this is kind of a virtual rendition. The exterior of the buildings, there's 2 or 3 here. The architects can design the buildings so that they fit in with the architecture of the area and what the community would like to have. Lots of green space with the buildings as well. Then we have some interior classroom space. Currently, most of our buildings are set up so that kids are in rows and so many rows in a classroom. Very difficult to move kids around and group them the way we like to do with our teaching and learning these days. So the classroom configurations are large enough that we can purchase equipment that actually works in the classroom. It doesn't have to be a single desk with 5 rows of 5 kids. We can purchase things at grade levels that are appropriate for those children at that age. Our hallways right now, if you've been in our buildings except for Montfort Heights, very crowded and very narrow. And so during a belt change or movement within the buildings, very little room here. So the stairwells now with the state requirements are much larger, allows for easier access, and the same with the hallways. And you'll notice that many of the hallways have a great deal of natural lighting associated with them, which also is beneficial for our energy efficiency with the lighting that comes through. Common areas such as our libraries, and yes, we are going more and more technological, but we still have books. And so the libraries serve as a library/media center, and again, the new buildings would allow for a much greater differences in configurations to allow classes to come in and utilize that space much more productively. Our gyms, many of our gyms still have tile floors. We do rent our gyms out very often. I think every night of the week they're out. So new gyms, up to new standards with enough room for spectators. Hardwood flooring would allow our facility renters to be a great deal happier with those.
And now we have Amy Wells going to explain the financial impact of this.
Currently, we are collecting a 4.52 emergency levy, which we use to operate and maintain and repair our buildings. But with the significant need of our buildings that we have just previously reviewed, we are proposing a bond/operating levy where we can build 3 new elementaries and renovate our other buildings, and then also have a piece of that for operating to maintain that investment over time. So we're proposing a 4.33 mil.
Okay.
On the current emergency levy at 4.52 mils, if a taxpayer and property owner are collecting the tax credits from the state of Ohio, the rollback 10% and 2.5% rollback credits from the state, they're paying about $138 a year. If they're not receiving those tax credits from the state, they're paying about $158. Any new levy after August of 2013, the state is no longer going to pay the tax credits for the property owner, and so that burden shifts back to the property owner. So with the new proposed levy at 4.33, that would be $151 a year. So it's going to depend on each property owner's value and their current situation with the tax credits or not.
When you came in, you received a brochure, and I want to go through this real quick. The front of it is the actual facility plan, and on the far left-hand column is what we're proposing to do as part of this $85 million project. The column right next to it shows additional renovations that need to happen in each of the buildings that are not being replaced, but we're only doing a small amount of those, and you can see the far right-hand column shows each building and then what that cost would be. The center 2 pages, it's an FAQ, and I would encourage everyone to go out to the website, www.nwlsd.org, because this has been updated. We've added 3 or 4 questions. As we've had these presentations, we've written down the questions and added that to the FAQ. So this one's a couple weeks outdated. We actually have some new questions on it. And then the last piece is the prior slide that Mrs. Wells went through showing the financial impact of it. So again, we thank everyone for coming out. We'll go ahead and open the floor up to any questions anyone may have. Yes.
I have two little girls at Cornell Elementary, kindergarten and second grade.
Okay.
We'll just get started.
Right.
Not long ago, but I kind of feel like we're getting short enough six to be long again.
Yeah.
And they're in the oldest building. It's very warm, as you all know. So I guess I just felt, I was very excited when it came out, hoping for something, at least for air conditioning. And now I hear through the grapevine we're not even getting air conditioning unless the electric was updated, but, I guess I was wanting more for my money.
Okay.
Yes, and I feel like the district is growing and the biggest schools not getting any room.
Well, what we did, I'm going to go back to that original slide and how this decision was made.
Right,
Let me-
69%.
Yeah.
Barely.
And ultimately, yeah, and ultimately, we need to do about $210 million worth of renovations throughout the district, and we had to make a decision where it was going to stop, and that is where we made the decision, is right around that 70% threshold. Welch is actually below that, but by combining buildings, we're able to save additional operating costs, and that's why that was added to the mix. When you look at Cornell, and I know it's hard to believe, but those older buildings actually renovate very well. And just like our three middle schools, we have, two of our middle schools are older as well, and they'll be renovated also. We are looking into air conditioning. We are hoping to be able to air condition it, but we're looking at other methods to do that. If we are able to air condition Cornell, then all the elementary schools will be air conditioned, but we are not air conditioning the high schools or the three middle schools. Part of Pleasant Run Middle, most of Pleasant Run Middle is air conditioned. Northwest High School is air conditioned, and a small part of Corwin High School is air conditioned. But we won't be air conditioning those. But we are trying to air condition Corwin Elementary, and we're looking into that right now. That's one of the questions we have out there is about air conditioning. It's been updated on the FAQ. But ultimately, is we could not afford to do it all, and we had to make some decision based on the data, and that's how we made the decision. It's not just Cornell, but there's three middle schools that are also not being replaced, and in Cornell, we are spending about $2.4 million in that building for some various upgrades. But that's how we made that decision.
The first thought came out, it was actually $90 million. The early email.
It was,
Correct.
yes. The original plan was about $90 million,
So very
yes.
quickly, it was like it got knocked down to 85.
It did get knocked down to 85. We took out Houston Elementary. We originally were going to do some renovations there, but the board wants us to look at this facility and Houston, and can we somehow combine programming for these two facilities into one. So we have Weigel here, and that would be vacated, but we have central office right here. At Houston, we have special ed programming. We have some professional development areas. We have a preschool there and enrollment there. And so the question is, can we somehow combine all those programming into one facility and then vacate the other facility? So that's why we decided to take Houston off of that list, and it brought it down to $85 million.
And the board members wanted it to be lowered slightly so that there's no additional cost or very little additional cost to the taxpayer.
Correct, so you have to change the tax.
Yeah, we will have, district-wide, we'll have space for all-day kindergarten, and that's something that the board would have to approve that, but we're hoping to offer in 2 years in 2017 with all-day kindergarten.
And the schools that we're closing and combining, currently they are narrow grade reading schools. So by combining them, again, we can put the K-5 grade levels back into all of our elementary.
Right. I understand that, I agree with that. I mean, that's why I was educated in children also. So that the full 3 through 5, whatever, seems
Right.
strange concept to me, doesn't have to waste the money. I see those kids at Cornell Elementary in the top floors of the unit, just drinking wet. And I don't know how those children are supposed to learn and pass these standardized tests when they have the teacher and they pass it on the nurses. Office, I mean, I hear it through the grapevine from other parents telling me it concerns me. My girls are not up there yet. But, that's my biggest concern.
Well, like we said, we're hoping to do air conditioning at that building, but all of our elementaries are in bad shape, and I know it's hard to believe, but the other elementaries are just as warm as Cornell. I mean, we have some that are not efficient in terms of energy, are not have quite a bit of glass that's not insulated glass, like Taylor or Struble even, they get extremely warm in those classrooms. So we have a lot of elementaries that have those issues. We're not saying Colerain Elementary doesn't have those issues or doesn't need to be improved. We're just saying we had to decide how much we could afford. The best plan is one that can pass, so we couldn't go to the voters with $210 million. We didn't feel like we could go to the voters with $100 million because of our level of indebtedness. That the Committee of Finance suggested that we stay around $90 million so that we have a little bit of space per state law to take out a loan in the future if we have some emergency that comes up. So we were looking at that as well. We just had to make a decision on where to draw the line. Yes? That was not something that ever came up in one of the plans, no. That would require the other elementaries to be nearly 1,200 students each. We felt like 900 was as large as we wanted to get with an elementary school. Yes? This first... You mean the elementary schools? Some are and some are not. Not necessarily all of them are. Colerain Elementary, like for example, Weigel has a little bit of a space that's not handicap accessible. As part of this first round, it will not be made handicap accessible. No. It is grandfathered, yes. So buildings, I don't know the exact dates, but unless you do certain renovations, you don't have to do ADA compliance for it because of that. We also have other elementaries that if we have a student that has a medically fragile type situation or a reason why they need to be in a handicap accessible, we have other buildings we can put them in if we need to. Any other questions? You know, that's a really good question. I don't know why there's an asterisk there. It doesn't signify anything. I'm just wondering if it's a typo that we never caught. I'm not sure what that asterisk is for.
The current emergency levy, which is expiring.
Correct.
How much of that is being used for salaries? Or was that just for operations, other operations?
Well, all the money we collect, in terms of state support and property tax goes into the general fund, and of that general fund, it gets spent on operations and all that. So, yeah, it just goes into the general fund. Our salaries and benefits are probably about 80% of our general fund. So
how are you going to replace your operating expenses if you're losing that 4.53 million?
we did a mock-up of the 5-year forecast in November and showed that because of when we originally passed these various levies prior to this, that the state, first of all, the state revenue is higher than what we had projected, and then our expenditures are lower than we expected. So as a result, we're able to lower this levy, and we show a 5-year forecast at the end of it with still a cash balance well past what we needed to have. So we can shift this money to pay for this bond, and we will not need to replace it in the general fund
So in
revenue.
other words, for you, levy is, well, it's a bond, or it's a combined.
Yeah, it's a combined. Right. So we will still receive 1.18 of it will be for operations, and the rest will be for the bond. And the overall rate drops about 0.19.
And is none of that you mentioning, and like with the current emergency levy, where some of it, with some people with our tax credits or all that, but none of the new ones, none of the new building bond operating levy would be subject to any of the rollbacks or?
Correct. So the state changed the law back in 2013. They're no longer doing that, and that was one way they balanced the budget, is that's one less expenditure they have. So as a result, if most homeowners receive that rollback, a few don't, and then some other property owners don't receive it. So for $100,000, you saw the slide there, if you're on $100,000 worth of property, if you're receiving that credit, you're paying $138 and some change, and then you're going to now start paying $151. So it's about a $13 increase per $100,000 of assessed valuation if you're receiving that credit. If you're not, it's about a $7 decrease, $6.50 decrease per $100,000. Does that answer your question? Any other questions?
Did you have one?
Yes, when they were talking about replacing all the schools a few years ago, they talked about taking separate entrances to certain areas so they can rent it out. Trying to get that income. Are they still planning on doing that?
Yeah, when we design these buildings, we will certainly look at that as something we want, because we currently rent out the facilities, but it's difficult to partition it off. So that's something we want to be able to, if we have the gym, we may have a secondary entrance where they don't have to get into school or something like that. But yeah, we'll be looking at that as part of the design. The design won't start until after May, after the levy passes. We'll start working on the design.
So if the design starts then, do we have an estimated time when we would start?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll start designing over the summer. We'll do some groundwork this coming school year, and in the spring of 2016, we'll break ground and start putting up steel, and then we'll occupy them for the 17-18 school year. So it's going to be a 2-year process to get these new buildings ready.
What's actually going into the locations for the new buildings, like the ones closest here, Bible and Google?
The biggest factor was something called swing space. So typically what happens, if we were to tear down Struble and build a new one, we'd have to find some place for those students to go for 2 years. So Struble, PRE, Pleasant Run Elementary, and Taylor, those 3 buildings, have enough space where we can build on them while the current school is still in session, and then open that up and tear down the old school. So that was the biggest factor, was the space, amount of land at each one of those facilities. Did you have another question, sir? You had your...
Yeah, I know you don't answer this question, but
The board has not looked at that as an option. At this point, we'll have the summer to make a determination if they want to scale it down or just pass an operating only. Ultimately, they'll have to pass a resolution by early August to do that for the November. But at this point, correct, some sort of operating to at least replace that 1.18. We do need that amount of operating. Any other questions?
We need more to do repairs and maintenance. Our roofs have $10 million.
Right.
And we would need to be able to continue to fix and repair our existing buildings.
Well, thanks again for coming out. We have a board meeting at 7 o'clock, so you're all welcome to stay for the next hour until the board meeting starts, or you can head home. But thanks again for coming out. If you go out to the website, you think of a question, you're welcome to email any of us, and we'll get back to you. Thank you.